Go ahead, Mayor.
Okay, we lost you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's budget hearing, the Raleigh City Council. We're going to be briefed by staff, and then we will go over budget notes that have been submitted during the course of the year, and we will have an opportunity to comment on them individually. So with that, Mary, if you would like to take the stage.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of council. For today's budget work session, the first item are those budget notes. There were 5 budget notes submitted throughout the past year in total. There were actually 6. One was on the air conditioners, but given that item came to council previously, we did not fulfill that request. As a reminder, included with the agenda was also a funding memo that provides council with additional information about options for funding each of these budget notes as applicable. And so if council needs more information, it is included with the agenda item. So if it's okay with you, we'll go through each item, see if there's any question, if staff can provide any additional information, and then where council desires, they can make a motion to include or to add it to the fiscal year 22 budget. All right, so the first budget note is involves the Raleigh digital connectors. This item was actually part of last year's, the fiscal year 21's budget notes. We brought it back this year, but there are no new updates. The program is running, but staff does not anticipate any increases associated with the fiscal year 22. So again, we can bring this item back again in fiscal year 23 with that budget. So I don't know if council has any questions or comments on that note.
I do. This has been too long. I know we couldn't help ourselves with COVID, but this program is probably one of the best we run and one of the most impactful programs that we run. So my hope is that we could use some of our federal stimulus funding to expand this program and really reach out to young people after this past school year. They're going to need this more than ever. So I would like to see this expanded, and I'd like for us to look at federal money as a means to achieve this goal. I've also talked to a number of private companies who would like to support this program. So while I'm not asking you to impact this year's budget, I'm asking if we could look at stimulus funds as a potential source for expanding this program. Mayor Pro Tem Branch.
Well, yeah, I was Mayor Pro Tem when I made the request as a budget note.
That's right. But that's what I'm reading from.
I definitely want to concur that it's time for us to look at ways to expand this program. And I understand the restraints currently, but with the federal CARES fund that's come in, we need to look at utilizing that, and also on modifying the program to allow corporate sponsors to give and contribute. So that will be my push on July 1 once we get into the new budget cycle. So don't be surprised if you get another budget note sooner than later.
Thank you. So no action needs to be taken on this. I think the message has been delivered. So any other comments? Okay. Next is budget note 2. You're on mute.
Involves 5 points. Kill me. The next budget note involves 5 points Glenwood Avenue corridor study. As outlined in the memo, there are 2 options for council consideration. I do have Michael Moore, Transportation Director, and present with us if there are any questions about this, and Pat Young from Planning and Development.
Do we have any questions on this item? Okay. Then no action taken. Is there any comments, questions? Councilmember Knight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion if we're going to do these individually or wait to do it as a package, but would like to make a motion.
Well, then I would suggest you make the motion.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. As y'all know, this would impact both District D and District E. It is a vital corridor in our city and is vital for a lot of other reasons. You could argue that has been overlooked in recent years, and the needs are great in terms of looking at our capacity there, both in terms of infrastructure, traffic related and otherwise. And there are safety issues right now around traffic, both in terms of capacity and also speed in the 5 Points area. And it is a great area, vital area with the mix of commercial business with the surrounding neighborhoods. And we need to plan ahead as that area continues to grow in terms of density. We do have some rezoning requests coming before us that are going to impact this area as well. That we need to take into consideration. So at this time, Madam Mayor, I would move to for option A of this budget note to be added to the budget, if that's the correct motion. And I'm not looking at that screen, but that's my motion, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Buffkin? Second, okay. And so that would be using the reserve funds to pay for this.
Correct.
Councilmember Knight, okay. All right, thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Clerk. Budget Note 3.
So the next budget note is regarding our Human Services grant funding. As you recall, the HRC requested during the budget process that moving forward that their allocation be increased 10% each year for the next 5 years. So this budget note, while there's no impact for the fiscal year 22 budget, there would be an impact for future budgets, including fiscal year 23, and staff would build that into the base next year as we begin the budget process. So there's no necessarily action for council take today on 22, but we would seek a vote or direction from council on whether or not to change the policy associated with the HRC funding for this inclusion in fiscal year 23.
Okay, do we have any questions? Councilmember Melton?
Mayor, this is not a question specific to this issue, but looking through the backup material, I felt the need to raise it now. I serve on the board of directors for the Tammy Lynn Center. The Tammy Lynn Center will be receiving grants in this year's proposed budget, and this issue also is associated with a potential grant to Tammy Lynn Center. And so I would request to be recused from voting on those issues.
So City Attorney, is that relative on this issue? I understand it's relative on the budget issue.
It should come up when you're voting on the entire budget. He shouldn't engage in any votes that have anything to do with the Tammy Lynn Center, but this one's just adding the one budget note. Is that correct?
Well, this would be a motion to approve the expansion of the program and incorporate it into the increase into future budget cycles.
Not that, but it doesn't have anything to do with Tammy Lynn, correct?
No.
Yeah, so I think we'll wait and deal with that when we vote on the entire budget.
I'll raise it again.
All right, well, are there any other questions? Okay, I'm going to make a motion to approve the expansion of the program and to incorporate the recommended increase into future budget cycles. So moved. Do I have a second? Mayor Pro Tem Stewart has seconded. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, clerk, that passes unanimously. Next is Budget Note 4.
Budget Note 4 is the expansion of the Raleigh Police Department's personalized police vehicle program. This had been submitted previously. We did update the information that is included in the budget notes, and we will try to answer any questions that staff may have or council may have.
Are there any questions for staff? Any comments? Councilmember Buffkin?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. You may recall I proposed this expansion last year, over a year ago, as a measure to improve morale and improve our recruitment efforts in RPD. I think that's a problem. I think it's a bigger problem than it was last year, and I think it needs the council's attention. I think it'd be a nice show of support for our police officers who work hard to keep our community safe. And in conversations with my colleagues, I understand there is interest in pursuing this. However, the interest is in the context of a more comprehensive approach to retention and recruitment issues in the police department. And there's a desire to hold those efforts for a month or two or three while we finalize our police chief search. And I'm amenable to that approach, although it remains a priority for me. So I will withdraw this budget note at that time and look forward to further conversations about how we improve recruitment and retention in RPD. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Buffkin. All right, next we have budget note 5.
So budget note 5 involves Dix Park All Faith Chapel rental fees. Their board proposed some additional fees or changes to the fees for the rental there after we had presented the user fee to City Council. And so these would adjust those accordingly as they were proposed. And staff is here to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions on this issue? Okay, I was asked by the leadership committee for Dix Park to bring this item forward. So I'm going to make a motion, going to move to include the proposed rental fees as found in the work session agenda packet for the Greg Poole Junior All Faiths Chapel at Dix Park for fiscal year 2021-22. Do I have a second? May Let's do it again. Councilmember Branch has seconded. All in favor? Okay, that's unanimous, clerk.
Madam Mayor, if I may, can we look at some point too at making sure that we may have a program in place for those that may want to use the center but may have some cost challenges? And I think that's something that should be a holistic approach for our entire city program, not just Dix, but we have this problem with other parks as well due to the rates.
Yeah, I think that that's an important equity issue and have raised this before. You know, it's great to build a park, but if people in the neighborhood can't afford to pay the fees, we haven't accomplished our goals. So I would ask our city manager to bring this forward with staff and take a look at our fee structure to make a determination. Maybe it's a policy change, whatnot, but we would have to relook at how we manage our fee schedule. Okay, thank you. Okay, Mary.
So the next item on the agenda, because that is the end of the budget notes, are just any other items that council may have questions on regarding the fiscal year 22 budget or any other issues that council wishes to raise at this time.
Councilmember Watson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have some questions about the RPD budget. I just a couple, if I could have the floor for a few minutes. We had the public hearing on the budget last week, and a lot of the folks who called in had questions about RPD budget and specifically the manager's office proposed budget increase. And so my first question is really, why is the office proposing the increase and where is it coming from?
So as council recalls, the police budget is increasing by approximately $5 million for fiscal year 22. So a breakout of that $5 million, 3.2 million of it includes merit benefits and the state mandated retirement system changes. So as a reminder, health insurance costs to the city are expected to increase about 7.8%, and we're absorbing those costs this year. And so that's included in that. Also, the Local Government Retirement System Board of Trustees voted to increase employer contributions by 1.2% annually through fiscal year 22, and that's been going on for the last few years. So in total, the city general fund has seen increases since fiscal year 20 in the amount of $8 million associated with our state retirement. And so that's part of that $5 million increase. Also, to address perceptions of greenway safety and enhance overall public safety, the budget does include $600,000 for a proposed Parks and Greenway unit that is comprised of 6 sworn officers and 1 supervising sergeant. Also included in that $5 million is $500,000 for vehicle upfits. This has been part of a 5-year commitment, and this is the last year of that, to ensure that our vehicles, when they're purchased, can be equipped with the right equipment. And so that's included in that $5 million. And additionally, another $500,000 is budgeted in federal forfeiture. And so remember, as you recall, that funding can only be used for certain things. And for fiscal year 22, it has been allocated for leased vehicles and for a 5-year planned replacement of tasers for the police department. And so that makes up that $5 million that is the increase associated with the police budget.
All right, so some of the other questions I have concern more with our, I guess, desire to shift the way the police department is structured and reimagining public safety. We've had a lot of discussions, I think even at this table over the past year, about coming up with a different way of caring for the community. You know, I've said it several times that I think when some folks call for help, they don't need a sworn officer with a badge and a gun to show up. Sometimes they need a mental health assistant or someone who can connect them with resources. And, you know, City Manager, you and I have had conversations one-on-one about my desire to see more of that focus in our police department in our budget. And so I'm just curious, where is that plan in this budget? Like what work are we doing to that end?
So one of the things I'll talk about, and hopefully this will answer your question, is we are currently conducting a 911 calls for service study along with RTI to really understand our public safety operations and how community outcomes may be improved. There are 4 phases associated with it. The first is to analyze the data. The second is to conduct research to identify any potential response alternatives, to your point, in terms of call types, and then to pilot those response alternatives and then evaluate the effectiveness of those pilots. We currently are still in phase 1. I recognize that this is moving slower than we anticipated, but it is a part of a cohort where Durham is actually leading the charge. They actually have the contract with RTI, and we have all been added to it. There are also 5 other North Carolina and South Carolina cities that are part of this cohort. We do anticipate having the data analyzed and ready this summer. So that means that later this summer, we'll be able to look at our pilot projects. And these pilot projects are really about looking at identifying alternative response interventions that fit our community and needs, and being able to align those city resources to those and support implementation. And so while none of that is included or reflected in the fiscal year 22 budget, I do believe there is capacity because we did not reduce the police budget in order to look at these pilots and fund them through the existing resources, to your point. So we'll be able to look at what are alternatives to our responses. And so we're excited about that study and anticipate having it completed with some alternatives or pilots once a new chief is in place and discussions can be had and something can be brought back later this summer.
So that's work that will be coming to us once we get the data from the 911 calls?
Yes, once we've got the data, we've worked with the police chief, we've worked with staff to understand, we've evaluated what other communities are doing or what some potential pilots would be, and then we would bring that back to City Council for consideration.
From within this budget?
22, yes.
And then the other question I have, and this will be my last one, is I know we already have stood up the Acorns program, which includes mental health professionals going out on calls for service, and that this budget includes some additional funding for them to get them set up in their own space. I guess my question is, why are we keeping Acorns and these additional potential civilian positions that you're talking about creating throughout the year, why are they staying within RPD and not in their own department?
Great question, Councilmember Melton, and I will take that one. The Acorns unit in its inaugural year will obviously be housed in RPD for efficiencies because we will run it as a pilot this year. I have said from day one, it is my intention that we will replicate this program throughout the city because we have issues of social concerns all throughout the city. This is our opportunity out of the gates to kind of get it right, to stand it up in a responsible way with integrity and authentic about the way that we address the human issues that are compelling to us in our city right now. There is an absolute opportunity that moving forward from lessons learned and some of our successes after year one to be able to replicate this potentially in another department or in our newly created community engagement office. So that we stand this unit up in a way that it is responsive and responsible to the people who need our help the most. However, we will never lose sight of the fact that we will have to have some degree of participation and integration by RPD because we will never want to put civilian employees in an unsafe environment. But as we benchmark other communities across the country, there are some opportunities and efficiencies that can be gained as we learned from this first year of full service. So we're excited about that. And as we move forward into budget preparations from fiscal year 23, I'll be able to bring forward some additional opportunities, how we can more intentionally address some of those calls that necessarily might not need, to your point, an officer with a service weapon to respond to. So I think what the call data will help us do is inform what that staffing model will look like, what the type of degrees and experience will be necessary to provide that level of service, and the numbers based on just the sheer call volume that we get. So there are a lot of moving parts to this conversation, but I am hopeful that as we bring a new chief forward, I will always say that reforming and reimagining public safety begins with leadership, right? And so as we open the door for new leadership in RPD, that presents us with a wonderful opportunity to look at things differently. So this budget allows us the flexibility to do that with still at the forefront a degree of community safety.
I have a follow-up question for the city manager related to this. We are hiring a number of non-sworn officers to work in different departments, ranging from victim advocates to domestic violence. Can you go over again what those positions are?
We currently have staffed in RPD's FTE count. We have civilian employees that serve as trauma counselors. They work with our family victims unit. And these are folks that we intend to increase in numbers. So with our FTE count that we have budgeted this year, we will have the flexibility to adjust those numbers to meet the demands of the different types of calls that we're getting. So all of those positions are currently housed in RPD, but they are civilian employees.
Can you give some examples?
Say, for example, if there is a family member that has a situation wherein, let's just say it's not a good environment for the children and the parents. We have trauma counselors that go out right now to provide assistance, not only to our officers that are part of the department, but we also go in and provide trauma assistance to those that are in need. We work with our mental health service providers in the county to be able to make sure that we have the wraparound and support services that the person in crisis might need. Again, these are non-sworn positions. These are employees who are housed in RPD based on their training and the level of experience that they have doing the work, but they are civilian employees. And as we receive the call data back, that will help us better inform how we will reclassify the existing positions in RPD to make sure that we're providing the best level of service to those in the community who are in crisis.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other questions? Councilmember Knight?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to ask also the Madam Manager a question. Given that Dix Park Conservancy is our partner in the building creation of Dix Park, do you feel that they're happy, content with the Dix Park related funding that's in this budget, setting aside our future parks bond? Do you feel that they are satisfied and feel like we're doing our part in this budget? Thank you.
Yes, sir, Councilmember Knight. I would say that they are. In fact, I got a gift from them today, so I would assume, and it's a gift that I can accept. It is a piece of a stained glass window from the chapel that was recently opened. I would say we've had conversations, we've had real conversations about the challenges that we are facing as a city, as we're facing as an organization, and how the Dix Park fits into that much larger picture. So I think we have a degree of commitment, and I think they understand that the commitment is authentic. And I feel very good about where we are in those conversations. And I think if you would ask the executive director as well as her board leadership, that they would also say that we're in a good place.
Right. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
I would agree with that statement. We had a very productive meeting. Marshall, myself, and the executive director and leadership, and they were very enthusiastic about where we're going and where we're heading. So I would say it was very favorable. Do we have any additional questions for staff? Councilmember Buffkin.
Thank you, Mayor, but not a question, but a few comments, if I may. Of course, you all know I have strongly held feelings about some of the issues that Councilmember Melton was just discussing with the manager. I couldn't have said it any better than the city manager did. So I appreciate that discussion and highlighting all the good work that's going on to reimagine policing. And I bear in mind that that effort takes resources. We're a fast-growing city. We've got too many vacancies in our police department, and all of these issues need the council's attention. So thank you for that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight a few favorite provisions in this budget. It's a very good budget. I'm awful proud of the work the city manager did to put it together, in particularly the Penny for Parks initiative that will have a lasting impact on our parks, making them better and more comfortable and more safe to be used every day, along with so many needed investments in various areas, affordable housing, stormwater, and our sewer utility, among many, many others, more than I could, or more than you all would want me to mention today. So I will leave it at that with my thanks for your time and attention and my expression of support for this budget. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I have one other question of the city manager. We have discussed the importance of helping those who are most vulnerable in our community. Could you just state for the record I think y'all have done a great job with this, but could you just state for the record some of the ways that we are incorporating that into this budget?
Sure, Mayor. And Mary, you may have to help if I forget some, because we've done quite a bit. We've been really intentional and deliberate about responding to the need of those in the community right now who are struggling. So we have some enhanced services and some additional resources allocated in housing and neighborhoods, and that is the department where most of our community development type work takes place. A lot of our partnerships with our nonprofit agencies, as well as our partnerships with Wake County. We have also provided funding in parks and recreation and cultural resources, as we mentioned last week in the city council meeting presentation. There's a great deal of participation from our community, and our community needed us last year in the middle of the pandemic, and we tried to deliver as best we could, trying to stand up programs to make sure that young adults would be able to get school in an environment that was conducive for learning. And so what we have is some funds allocated and appropriated for assistance so that kids could be able to go to after school programs, participate in some of our parks and recreation programs. And in addition to that, we are going to be very mindful and intentional about how we move forward with the spending of the stimulus money from the federal government. You all will get your survey this week to start talking about what nonprofit organizations and agencies you would like to fund, what small businesses we would like to assist as we recover from the pandemic. In addition to that, if you'll look at our various grant sources, HRC grants, our arts agency grants, our outside agency granting opportunities, there's a lot of money that has been placed in the hands of the people or placed in the service providers who will ultimately get it in the hands of the people in the community that are hurting. So I feel really good about some of the creative strategies that we put in this budget, Mayor and Council, to be able to make sure that when people need assistance, that we're better positioned to provide that assistance. I think Mary's trying to say something. I don't know if we can hear her.
That just as a reminder, sorry, they keep turning me on and off in here. So as a reminder, the budget also includes our continued commitment to affordable housing. So included is the $24.8 million from the 2020 bond, in addition to the general fund contribution that we make yearly of $6.3 million. Also included in the budget is that, if you recall, transit will continue to be fare free through fiscal year 22. And so that is something we'll bring back to council for conversation, but that is also included in the fiscal year 22 budget. So in addition to what the city manager talked about, there's lots of other opportunities. There's funding, if you recall, additional funding for bicycle and pedestrian improvements. And while we talk about maybe that doesn't hit our most vulnerable, I would tell you that it does when we talk about sidewalks and walkability and those things. And so there was an additional almost $5 million put in the budget for that this year. So lots of opportunities there for our community. So that was what I had.
Thank you. Councilmember Branch, you have a question?
Yes. Well, question, kind of a statement. Recently, everyone knows about the eviction notices to residents on Garner Road. Those residents now have been able to extend their stay, and we have groups working with them as well as working with the new owner. But this is going to be an isolated situation, and if we can just have a number or something that we can start sharing to be a point of contact. There are a lot of agencies doing a lot of things, but we need to heighten the attention to eviction notices. So I just want to put that out there. We've done a lot of great work to help with housing in this budget. I'm praying we can use some of our federal dollars to do even more, because we have an immediate need with properties being sold by the day and new landlords giving eviction notices. So I'll be in conversation more with my fellow council members as well as our staff. But, thank you for the work we're doing, but we have to do more. And I just want to state that.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments? Councilmember Knight?
Just very quickly, Madam Mayor, thank you. I too am supportive of this budget. I appreciate the hard work that the manager and her team, budget team, Mary and all of her team have done to put this together in a tough year in a lot of ways. They have found the appropriate type and levels of funding, I think, across the board to do what we need to do to continue to make our city better and greater for all the citizens and residents of our city. So I look forward to supporting this budget at the appropriate time here, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I guess first off, we will need a motion, and Mr. Melton will take care of that issue at the appropriate time. Let me see what the motion is first. Mayor Pro Tem Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. We actually have a series of motions to kind of handle Councilmember Melton's needing to recuse himself on that vote. So if we can do that first, And then we could approve or vote on the grants for the Tammy Lynn Center, and then we can deal with the whole budget.
Okay, so the first motion then is to recuse Councilmember Melton from this first vote on Tammy Lynn. Do we have I'll make that motion, seconded by Councilmember Branch. All in favor? Okay, that is unanimous. Mayor Pro Tem Stewart.
Yes, so I would like to move to approve grants for the Tammy Lynn Center as indicated in the fiscal year 2022 budget.
Okay, do we have a second? Councilor Branch has seconded. All in favor? Okay, that was unanimous, clerk. Councilmember Melton can come back now. Thank you.
Can you see me? Okay, good.
Yes.
And then
Okay,
I'd like to move for adoption of the fiscal year 2022 budget and the associated ordinances and resolutions as found in the work session agenda packet.
okay. Councilmember Branch has seconded that. All in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, opposed. Budget passes by a 6-2 vote with Councilmember Fort and Councilmember Cox voting against. Do we have any other comments before we adjourn the meeting? Okay, I would just like to commend staff for their hard work. You know, pulling together a budget like this, especially in during the type of year we've had with COVID, all the impacts we've had on our budget. I just want to thank them for their hard work and great work in ensuring that our priorities as a council were addressed and met. So thank you. With that, we will adjourn the meeting. Just a reminder that we will have a work session starting at 4 o'clock tomorrow. See everybody then. Thank you.